Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm good.
Awesome.
Doesn't
Thank
look like
you.
my camera's not working, is it?
No.
So,
I wonder why that is.
I thought you got a new computer. Now I can
Oh,
see you, but
all
you got
right.
to add your background.
Yep. I need to add a background somehow.
Go into choose virtual, click on the up caret from this video and choose my virtual alpaca wrap.
Yeah, no, but where's the folder with our stuff? It's in marketing.
I sent it to you. Find it and send it again.
Okay. All righty. Alyssa, can you still hear me?
Yep.
All righty, good. So this is Jonathan. He's my co-founder.
Hi, nice to meet you. Aaron should be hopping on in the next few minutes.
All right. How about I'll tee up I'll tee up the slides.
Sounds good.
Whoops. Clicked the wrong button. Oh, Alyssa, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. You have to somehow allow me to share the screen.
Try now. I made you a co-host.
Okay, I can do it now.
Okay, awesome.
How many people are you guys expecting today?
I think we had 18 registrants. So hopefully they all show up.
You guys do a lot of work with DEIC, Efficiency of Vermont.
Sometimes, yes. There's Aaron. Hi.
Hi, Aaron.
how's it going?
It's going good. Just trying to find my slide presentation on the screen share. Let's see if I go.
There you go. We see your email.
Let me get rid of all that.
There we go.
If I go to this view,
What's that?
if I go to this view, this goes better, right?
Yes, perfect. So we still have people signing in, so let's wait maybe one more minute and then I'll say a couple of words and then send it over to you.
Sounds good.
How's the process going in Maine? I know you met with, or you did a call with Maine grocers.
Yeah, it's been going very well in Maine. We d- we don't have the same grant that allows us to help the food retailers in Maine the way we do in Vermont, yet we still have about, I think, in between a half a dozen and a dozen grocery stores in the process of applying.
Well, that's good. That's good. Wait one more minute and then we'll jump in. Okay, well, why don't we get going? Hopefully we will have a couple others join, but we are recording this, so we will be able to share that with those who registered that haven't made it. So thank you all for joining us today. Happy Tuesday. I am Erin Segrist, president of the Vermont Retail and Grocers Association. And we have with us today Peter Cooke from the Ratio Institute. So as we have pushed out in some of our newsletters and our Friday updates, the USDA has funding for small business owners that are looking to make energy efficiency improvements or renewable energy investments to lower your energy costs, generate new income, and strengthen the resilience of your operation. As I shared, Peter Cooke from the Ratio Institute is joining us today to provide some insight on how you might be able to take advantage of the Rural Energy for America program. These grants can cover up to 50% of the project costs, but there are steps and requirements that you have to take prior to beginning your project, as well as reporting throughout the project. So we have worked with Peter in the past. We have members who have worked with Peter, and it's always good to have a pro on your side that can guide you through the process and also save you some money and some headaches in the process as well. So I will pass it over to Peter, but Peter, I don't know if we want to do questions throughout or if we want to hold off and then do some follow-up after you present.
Well, yeah, we can do both.
Okay.
Because my colleague and co-founder of Ratio Institute, Jonathan Tan, is on the call, so he can handle questions in the chat. So if you have a burning question during the presentation, and you don't want to chime in and ask it out loud, you can put it in the chat. Jonathan will answer those as we go. If you feel like you want to ask your question out loud as we're going, that's fine. There's not like 100 people on the call. I'm happy to stop. You're not going to interrupt the flow. So I'll just explain the opportunity that we have here in Vermont. And thank you, Erin and Alyssa, for setting up this call. This is a great benefit of membership to the association to be made aware of this, because the vast majority of food retailers around the country are not aware of this funding opportunity through the USDA. So I'll advance my slide, give you a little intro. My name is Peter Cooke, co-founder of Ratio Institute. We are a nonprofit organization, and we specialize specifically with food retail. We are really focused on helping grocery stores of all sizes, and we work with grocery stores of all sizes, right down from a 1,000 square foot grocery store to a 100,000 square foot grocery store or a chain. We have resources and tools and we've been doing this for years. And yes, Aaron and I have connected for a number of years in terms of providing benchmarking analysis and energy analysis for Vermont food retailers, and it's been a great relationship. This new opportunity, which we'll really focus on, is about funding your grocery store if you're going to be planning any energy upgrades. But just the last word about Ratio Institute is, yeah, we're a nonprofit, we are mission driven, and we've worked with a lot of grocery stores all over the country, and we have a lot of expertise in helping maximize profits and reduce costs at the grocery store. So this is the agenda of the conversation. The Q&A piece at the end will probably occur in about 20 minutes from now. It's not going to be a very long call. I'll just go over these first 5 points and spend a couple minutes on each one. There are factors that are driving energy efficiency right now, one of which is this funding opportunity, but I'll also talk about some other factors, and then I'll get really into the specifics of what is REAP, the Rural Energy for America program, who's eligible to apply, how you can qualify, and how would you apply. And so I'll go over those details, and like I said, you can put your questions in the chat, or you can ask them out loud. If you unmute yourself, that's fine too. One of the things to think about, one of the things that is driving some of this energy efficiency work has to do with the AIM Act, and it's the America's Infrastructure Manufacturing Act. This is out there right now. The particular component of the AIM Act is the HFC phase down. 85% phase down coming of HFC refrigerant gases. And so the vast majority of refrigerant gases at grocery stores are HFCs. 79% phase down by 2029, and then an 85% phase down. A lot of grocery stores are trying to think about how they can deal with this now, because the equipment that they have to run the refrigerant gas that they have right now is going to be sort of a challenge going in the future as these HFC gases are being phased out of being manufactured. So right now, this is a good time to think about using these federal funds to at least pay for half of that transition over if you're up for it. But there is also other factors driving energy efficiency. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about that can really help maximize profits and reduce costs are upgrading refrigeration systems, whether it's advanced controls or leak detection, or some of the new systems like CO2 or propane. Some of these can reduce your operational costs by 40% or more. I know there's a lot on this slide. I'm going to move past it, but you'll all have access to these slides. I've sent this slide deck to Aaron and Alyssa, so that way you can have it. But some of the other things that are driving the need for energy efficiency at grocery stores is the inefficient use of energy at grocery stores. So some of the things that Jonathan and I find when we go to grocery stores to help do an energy assessment or a sustainability benchmarking exercise, we find some really common things that really increase the amount of energy used at that grocery store. And even though there's 4 bullet points here, there's actually 5 things, and I'll just highlight them for you. The heated wrapping machines, which every grocery store pretty much has, and a lot of grocery stores have up to 5 or 6 or more. These appliances can use more electricity than your house. These things cycle on and off 700 watts continually. Sometimes they're turned on in the morning, hopefully turned off at the end of the day. Sometimes they're not turned off at the end of the day because they are forgotten. In the case of this picture, this one inexplicably has a sticker on there asking the employees not to turn it off at the end of the day, but to leave it on 24/7, 365. This is a huge cost. There's not a lot of appliances in the store that use as much electricity as this thing. But the more strategic ways to do this would be to use it when needed, or, use it at the end of the shift. That way you can kind of like really prioritize when it's being used, but at the bare minimum, at least making sure it's off at the end of the day. The blocked return air vents on open cases, that's the bottom picture on the right there. Jonathan and I see produce, we see different products like in the beer aisle, blocking those grill vents. When those return air vents or those grill vents can't recirculate the cold air, That cold air then just spills out into the floor, making that that refrigeration machine basically operate inefficiently. We've calculated it to be a cost of 32 cents per foot per day. So your 20-foot average, which is what we find when we go to grocery stores, 20 feet, comes out to close to $2,000 a year. $2,000 increased cost in terms of an inefficient use of electricity is going to require $36,000 of increased sales. And that's because of the profit margin, but that's also because of the way the economics of efficiency work. So this is also driving the need for energy efficiency at grocery stores. The bottom left are motors and fans. These two are you can see a sticker there, EC for electrocommutated. Those are the more efficient motors driving those fans right now. In a lot of grocery stores, it's the inefficient, old style shade pull motors that are not as efficient. These newer EC motors have a quicker payback, but these are also in walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers. And the other thing that we like to talk about with walk-in coolers and freezers are the doors and whether or not the gaskets are in good shape or whether or not they're inadvertently left open, and just basically store air infiltration throughout the store, whether it's coming in from the receiving area into the store or whether it's coming from a conditioned space into another conditioned space. But there's a massive amount of savings just from these 4 bullet points. Jonathan and I have calculated that these 4 bullet points represent some really easy, low cost or no cost ways to save energy. We've calculated that within 15 minutes, we can find $15,000 of energy savings in any grocery store in America. And it's usually coming from these 4 bullet points. And $15,000 of annual savings equates to $270,000 in sales. So it's definitely good to see, like, at your own store with just these 4 bullet points, how your store is doing. We're happy to help you. But getting into the REAP part, like if you're going to be thinking about an energy upgrade, you're going to want to know about REAP. So what is REAP? It is a federal grant to the United States Department of Agriculture is managing this grant. They got $2.02 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act, 1.7 billion of which has gone to this program. And the USDA is actually starting to stress out that they may not be able to spend all the money. So they have offered organizations like Ratio Institute and others to go to each of the USDA offices at each state and try to find businesses that can take advantage and leverage this opportunity to bring funding in. And I'll tell you how the funding works, but I just really wanted to emphasize the fact that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to really get a lot of expensive equipment that your store may need at least 50% paid for. And Jonathan and I have been in hundreds and hundreds of grocery stores over the past year, and we're finding 20, 30, even in some cases 40-year-old equipment that is chugging along very inefficiently. If you're not going to invest in that equipment now with a 50% opportunity to have it paid for, when are you going to do it? So we'd really like to have you encourage you to think about applying for a REAP grant, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. These are the things that you can use REAP funds for. So whether it's high efficiency heating, ventilation, air conditioning, insulation, lighting, cooling, or refrigeration units, any of the things listed on here are eligible to be funded through REAP. And as I mentioned before, they're not going to fund the entire project. They will fund 50% of it. And so you would be required to come up with the other 50%. But it's basically like getting all these projects done for half price. If you do get the grant funds, you have to pay for the entire project up front, but then you submit receipts at the end of the project and you're reimbursed only if you've been qualified and approved by the USDA. And Ratio Institute is one organization that can help you do that. We can help get you qualified and we can help you apply. In a lot of the cases, we will even submit the application for you. But once your application has been in and received, you can start thinking about your project. if you're waiting to find out if you're funded before you go through with the project or not, you have to wait to hear from the USDA if your project was funded. But if you're really hot to try to get going on a project right now, you want to take the chance that it might be funded, as soon as you get your letter of receipt from the USDA that it's in, you can start. But if you start spending money on a project now and you want to get it reimbursed later, it will not qualify. You need to be incentivized by this program. So they want you to apply first, then start spending money. And as we mentioned, it is up to $500,000 per site. You could do a really small project of a minimum of $1,500, which means that you would get, you could do a $3,000 project and get $1,500 back. That's the bare minimum. You could do a $1 million project at your store and get $500,000 back. And if you don't have the access to the capital needed to fund that project in its entirety before you got reimbursed, the USDA does have a loan program to try to give a loan for the amount until you are reimbursed. There are also other funding and finance institutions out there that can possibly help you finance the project until you're reimbursed for that 50% that they've approved you for. This is for rural independent grocery store owners in communities of less than 50,000 people. There is a map attached to this presentation, and you can determine whether or not you qualify. And I'll show you what that looks like. If you go to their website, which looks like this, it says click here for the following programs. You will see, let's see, it will say Rural Energy for America Guaranteed Loan Program. Yes, that's in there. But you click it's kind of hard to tell like where to click, but you click the blue words. It will eventually take you to a map. The address bar, I put in a Connecticut grocery store that we were working with because I want to show you how this looks. So once you put your address in, you hit go, and it will zoom in on the map and tell you whether or not that address is in a qualified location as being rural or not. So the grocery stores that are closest to Burlington will not qualify, although you can get pretty close to Burlington and still be considered rural. Vermont's in pretty good shape, in terms of being able to qualify for this program. There's probably not many food retailers that don't qualify in Vermont, but you need to go through this map and find out. And if you're having a challenge trying to figure out how to work the USDA map program, you can get in touch with us and we can help you out. It's also pretty finicky about where it qualifies or not, because I just changed the address literally for like across the street. And this next slide will show you how it now says this address is not located in an eligible area. The orange area is not eligible, but if I go back and it comes up green, it is on the right side of the street. So how the United States Department of Agriculture determines what is rural and what's not is really as close as being on one side of the street or not in some communities. So you really need to try to make sure that, before you go through the whole application process, that your store actually qualifies. So how can you qualify for a REAP grant? So the process is, it starts with an assessment, or you have to benchmark your store, which means you have to have an energy assessment or an energy audit. We have an online survey that you can use, that we use to qualify grocery stores. You submit your utility data after you use our online assessment form. You submit the utility data 1 full year of energy, water, waste, and heat and electricity as energy. Waste and water is what we need. We want to really put all those things in your application for you to help you be as competitive as possible. So we want that 1 year of data. And then Ratio Institute will give you a call to go over your energy assessment and how it balances out with the utility data that you've submitted. And that there is your qualified energy assessment. You can connect with another energy audit firm if you would like, but our process is specifically geared to grocery stores. It does not require us to be on site. We can get a lot of information through our online survey, which will take you about 20 minutes to do. But that combined with the utility data will qualify that assessment for your store, and then you can apply. Some of the energy audits that I've been hearing about throughout New England range in the price of $6,000 to $10,000 for an energy audit. And Ratio Institute is working in other states, but we're not charging that much. We're charging $600 for energy assessment. But in the state of Vermont, you do not have to pay for the energy assessment because Ratio Institute is under additional funding from the USDA to provide that for no cost to you. So I really encourage you to think about going through the Ratio Institute assessment process because it's already paid for. You don't have to worry about paying for it.
Peter, can I just jump in real quick?
Yes.
We have grocers, retailers, and specialty food producers that will be eligible. So are you able to work with all of those retailers, just to clarify for the recording for those that aren't on?
Yeah, we have a certain amount of retailers that we can work with under our grant. So I think, if we we've already been working with a half dozen of them. So some of them have already found out about us. We still have spots. I think we have about 5 more spots that we can do. But yeah, whether they're food manufacturers or food retailers, we can do that assessment for you.
Or just a general retailer also?
Yeah.
Hardware
No,
stores,
a general
clothing stores.
retailer like a shoe store or something like that, or a bookstore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might be better served by one of the other grant recipients that are doing the energy assessments for no cost, because our proposal to the USDA was that we were working specifically with food retailers. We are working with another food manufacturer, but if you're a different type of retailer, not food retail or grocery store, our expertise is in refrigeration. So if you're a shoe store or a bookstore, you're not, but yeah, you may be better served. There's a couple of other organizations that have, I think maybe one other. I think there's the USDA office in Vermont can help you find somebody that can do that assessment for you. But yeah, we're specifically focused on grocery stores.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, sure thing. All right, so the next step is our ongoing engagement. You will get a lot of value out of our report, out of our assessment and our report. You will find things out about your grocery store that you maybe had a hunch about, or maybe you didn't know about, that we will be able to tell you when it comes to how your grocery store is using energy. It's going to be very enlightening for you. Even if you didn't decide to continue to apply for the grant, the report that we can give you is going to be very mind-opening. It is going to really have you look at your grocery store from a different perspective. So I really encourage you just to do the assessment. Even if you don't do the grant, the assessment is just by itself worth it. So if you decide to go along with the grant, you're going to have an idea, or you can work with us to come up with an idea of what kind of project you want to do at your store and get funded. And you would work with your vendor that you like already, whether it's HVAC or refrigeration or lighting vendor, whoever it is that you work with, you have them come on site and give you a scope of work, which is basically what's the project that they're going to do, what are the numbers, how much is it going to cost, what is their thought in terms of how much energy is going to be saved. And you can provide that to us. Part of the grant allows us to help you apply. So once you've decided you want to apply, Ratio Institute can help you with that process, and we're going to need that scope of work from your vendor. And it, again, like I said, it goes over the numbers and what it's going to cost and what the payback and the impact is. They'll develop a timeline. If you get the grant, you have 2 years to spend the money. So we will help you with that. And then we put all this in a very lengthy application, but we have the application boiled down into one checklist for you as part of our technical assistance to the food retailers, which is what we're being paid for already by USDA in Vermont. So we've taken a lot of material on their website and boil it down into a simple checklist for you, and things that you need to get together in order to have a successful application. And I can answer some questions, but I just want to say, once you get all the application materials and you have your scope of work from your vendor, and you have your energy assessment. You submit that, and then hopefully it gets approved. There are 3 deadlines coming up. The first deadline is March 31st. I think we already have about 15 or 20 grocery stores that are really aiming to have theirs submitted by that date. Once it's submitted by March 31st, the USDA then on April 1st starts reviewing all those that were received January, February, and March, just the first quarter. The next quarter is April, May, June, so it's due on June 30th. They won't review anything that they receive from April 1st until June 30th until July 1st. But if you get an application in by March 31st and you don't get funded, your application goes back in and you have a second chance at getting funded on the second quarter. The third quarter is September 30th, 2024, and that is actually the last quarter of this funding opportunity. So you have 3 swings at the ball, and if you miss on the first or second, you still have another 1 or 2 chances. After September 30th, the 50% funding level for this grant may go back to what it used to be, which was 25% funding, which is a little bit harder to pencil out the numbers to make it work. But I mean, it still is a good opportunity, and it's always been that it's been that opportunity for years with USDA and REAP. But right now, this 50% opportunity, it's kind of like a glitch in the matrix. It's kind of like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and this is the time to go for it. So if you're thinking about new refrigeration equipment or going to the newer refrigerants or new lighting, this is the time to do it right now, because there may never be another time where it will be 50% again, and it's certainly never going to go above it. So this is the big opportunity. Once you get approved, if you're working with Ratio Institute, we will help execute that grant for you, but our funding helps with the application. If you get approved and you want to have us continue to help manage that grant, we do have a fee associated with that. That is 10% of the overall project that's funded. And then we take care of all the paperwork, all the metrics, all the measurement, all the quarterly reports, all the final reports, all the cost justification to the USDA. You don't have to do a thing. We handle all the paperwork. It's a nonprofit organization. We're used to all the paperwork that go in with grants. So basically, if you get the grant, we will administer that grant for you, and you won't have to ever think about it. It's just going to be a nice, pleasant experience as you claim that 50% basically incentive. This is what our report looks like. And I'm just gonna, it's a 4-page report. And we start off, when you go through our assessment survey, our assessment tool, our online assessment tool, we're gonna help you calculate what you're saving now in terms of energy efficiency at your store. Then we're going to tell you what you could be saving. And in the case of this grocery store here, the potential savings were $75,000 a year, which equate to $1.2 million in sales. This is an example store. I mean, this is actual data from a store, but we just kind of made a different address for where our headquarters is located in Santa Cruz, but this is actual grocery store data. The third page is some of the things that we discuss in our interview process about what else we can determine that your store may or may not need, and what's either costing you or saving you. And then the last page is we will look at your annual operating comparison with the utility data, and we can tell you what your store is using more or less compared to another store of the same size. So in this case, it's a 25,000 square foot store. So we can tell you if you're using more. So if you have a 6,000 square foot store, we can tell you if you're using more energy than most 6,000 square foot stores or less, and why. And we can go through all that info when we deliver our qualified report that gets you on the road to applying. So this is my information. You can email me if you are interested, and we would be happy to help you. We're at about 325, 328 right now, so we can take questions and answers. I know I see on the chat that there's been a bunch, so I haven't looked at it. But if you have any questions that you want to ask right now verbally, you can unmute yourself, and we're happy to take questions. Aaron, do you have any questions?
I
Put you on the
was
spot.
I was just looking at the chat to see if we could summarize it.
Sure.
So then Ratio Institute is working with grocers, but there are other organizations that can work with general retailers. Linda, we can connect with each other after the fact. The Ratio Institute fills out the application if you decide to work with them, and that will help you to increase your potential for being eligible for one of these. And then the deadline, let's see, the application deadline coming up is for September. There's not one in August, right?
No, March 31st, March 31st, June 30th, and then the last one is September 30th. So if you
Perfect.
don't, it's going to be hard to get you in on the March 31st one unless you're really quick and you get your statement of work in. But at this point, you might be looking at the June 30th deadline, but we'd like to try to, make sure because we still have a month and a half. So, but we have a lot of grocery stores that are applying in New England. We're working with a whole bunch around the States. And yeah, we've got about in between 20 and 30, I think, in the queue right now, but we have the capacity to get you in if you're looking for it, but we'll try to get you to the March 31st deadline. But if we don't, June 30th is the next.
Great. And so again, you have to, grocers or producers need to pay the cost up front, but then you receive reimbursement for up to 50%.
That's right. If approved, don't spend any money unless you know you're approved. I do have a grocery store in Vermont that is really anxious to get a new case. They're buying the new case, whether they're funded or not. And he needs the case like ASAP. So we're trying to submit his proposal in within the next week. So that way he can get the email that it was received, which then means he can start spending money, whether he gets approved or not. But he needs to do this new case, whether or not he's approved or not, he's doing it. But he wants to make sure that he doesn't disqualify himself from potential funds by not buying the case before he gets his letter of receipt. So once he gets that, then whether or not he gets approved, it's just going to be, extra if he gets approved. So that'd be great. But if he doesn't, he's still going forward with the case. He needs a new case.
Right. And I think the last piece we just want to reiterate is that the Ratio Institute, you're able to work with energy with 10 Vermont businesses to provide free energy audits. You're already working with a handful of them, so there is a limited number of free audits available. So if you do have any interest, please reach out to Peter Cooke. His email is on the screen. And if you do have questions, again, feel free to reach out to Peter, but also to either myself or Alyssa here in the office. Quick and straightforward. Thank you for that presentation, Peter. We will also be sending this out in Friday's update just as a reminder or informational resource. So hopefully we'll hear from you, or Peter will hear from you with questions or interest. Peter, Jonathan, thank you for your time, and nice to see all of our members joining, and hopefully we'll